Hi there, it's Linda here. Thanks for joining me for Mudra stamps today as I play with this gorgeous new Mudra stencil. I really wanted to use it with the gorgeous Nuvo Glimmer paste. So my idea was to create all the colour on the background first with my Distress ink blending, and then I would glimmer paste over the top with the gorgeous stencil. So I used the stencil, putting it back and forth on top of my white cardstock, working out where the 4 roses will fall on the card. And I'm starting off with Candied Apple. That will be my second darkest colour that I'll be using, and I'm just getting an idea where the centre of the roses will be. Blending on with a sponge dauber some of the Candied Apple colour, and then moving on to my deepest, darkest colour, which is Fired Brick. So a new dauber for each colour, and I just want Fired Brick right in the centre, so adding a little bit with the sponge dauber. I find because I'm using the stencil and the glimmer paste over the top that I don't need to get a perfectly smooth ink blend as I would often try to when I'm using my mini ink blending tools. Because you're going to have the effect of the glimmer paste over the top, it means that it's a little more forgiving. So now I'm just adding my greenery. I'm just getting an idea of where all the leaves are around the rose images, and I'm starting with cracked pistachio. It's a very light green, so I'm just adding touches of that wherever the foliage will be. Once I have my green basically mapped out, I'm moving on to the next colour for the roses, which is Abandoned Coral, and that's my mid colour. There's still a lighter colour to come, so adding quite a bit here, trying to get quite a good amount of colour down there on the card and really building up that large rose shape. I'm now moving on to the lightest of my rose colours, which is Warm Lipstick, and just building up that colour right around the outside of the roses, getting a nice large round rose shape that will sit there behind the stencil, and gradually building up the colour bit by bit. Put my stencil on, check that everything's in the right place, and then building up the depth. I do need more colour right in the very centre of the roses, so a bit more Fired Brick, just trying to get that depth right in the middle, doing a check, making sure I've got it in the right spot, and continuing the process. You'll now see me move on to the second of my greenery colours, which is Lucky Clover, and I then move on to using a third colour for the greenery, which is Pine Needles. So that's my darkest shade. So I just want there to be a mix of light through to dark, just like you'd find in nature, different variations of the colours there. So I'll let you watch the process as I add a little bit more of the deeper, darker colours in the greenery sections there, and then keep testing my stencil over the top to make sure I'm happy with the result. Well, that's all my ink blending done, so it's now time to add some splotches of water using my distress sprayer, pushing the trigger halfway to get quite large water droplets, and then a tissue on the top. Pick up all that colour just to add some interesting texture to the background. Soak up all the water there, give it a quick dry with my heat gun before I then add some ink splatters as well, using Candied Apple and then Lucky Clover. Right, so my background is all finished and I've given it time to dry thoroughly, and now it's time for the stenciling. So placing my stencil on the top, making sure it's exactly where I want it, and here's the gorgeous Nuvo Glimmer paste in Moonstone, which is a gorgeous shimmery colour, and using a plastic spatula, just applying a thin layer of the Glimmer paste carefully all the way over the stencil, making sure I scrape it to all the edges and into all those little cracks and crevices, and then you'll see me lift it off and I'll give you a nice close-up look at the beautiful glimmer. Time for my sentiment, which today comes from the beautiful new Universal Love stamp set, and you can see I'm just giving you a close-up look here of the Mudra stamp cases for the larger stamp sets. It's a very thick solid plastic, so you won't need to swap these stamps out into other protective pockets like we often have to do because the packets break and tear. This won't be happening with these Mudra packets, which I think is fabulous. For my sentiment today, I am going to heat emboss it on vellum. So I've stamped with Versamark ink, and then I'm using the Nuvo Classic Gold embossing powder, and I'll be heat setting it and I'll show you the beautiful end result. Now when you create a beautiful background like this one today using the gorgeous rose stencil and the glimmer paste, you then are very reluctant to cover it up, of course, with a sentiment. So that's where vellum does come in very handy, because of course it lets some of the design still peek through underneath, which is gorgeous. So you will see I drew lines so I can then tear my vellum roughly along those lines. I don't want it perfect. And I can then fold the vellum around my card, and I will attach it on the back with some double-sided tape.